Breaking news, 4 new cameras have leaked. The Sony FX2, the Nikon Z9 II, that's a big one, the Z7 II with over 60 megapixels, the Canon R6 II, and the baby R1, the Canon R7 II is coming. I'll tell you about them all, but first I want to thank our sponsor, Squarespace. Head to squarespace.com/Tony when you need any presence on the web. That could be your photography portfolio, a video reel, a website for a business, or even a personal project, because everything deserves a better space on the web than what social media gives you, because you should have control. You should own it, because social media could disappear at any point. Don't worry, Squarespace makes it very easy. Choose from one of their beautifully designed templates. You can use AI to help design your website for you and customize it. Colors, fonts, logos, Squarespace makes all of that easy. Try it out completely free. No credit card required. Just go play and I promise you'll love it. Start at squarespace.com/Tony. Just have fun setting up a website for free. After you love it, the coupon code Tony will save you 10%. Thanks Squarespace. First, the Sony FX2 has been leaked. This comes to us via CanonRumors.com. The FX series of cameras are their video-centric cameras. So cameras without viewfinders, they tend to have a built-in cage, so they have little places to screw stuff on all over the camera body, and well, they tend to be a lot more expensive. The FX3 was based on the Sony A7 III with 12 megapixels. This one's gonna be a little bit bigger. It's gonna have a similar body to that FX3, but the guts of the Sony A7 IV. It actually seems like an absolutely insane choice to me, and not one I would even recommend. Now, this sounds good in specs. It's a 33 megapixel camera, but from our testing of that A7 IV, the readout speed isn't great. Not what you would want from a full frame video camera. And as a result, it does full width 4K 30. But if you want to go to 4K 60, you have to crop down 1.5 times to what filmmakers call Super 35. But that's a huge bummer. I hate having to crop down. And I think 4K 60 is a minimum that I would require from a modern camera. Not that everybody publishes at 60 frames per second, but so frequently do you want to slow things down to half speed that it seems vital. And recomposing around a 1.5 times crop, I think, is unacceptable. Like, you'd probably have to change lenses, and you might not have a prime that was exactly the right focal. Anyway, I consider the 1.5 times crop to 4K 60 to be kind of unacceptable, and thus I kind of dismiss it. And that makes me question the whole priority around this camera. Like, why would they use a 33 megapixel sensor that can't do full width 4K 60 when cameras like the R6 II can do full width 4K 60 and this camera can't? For video features, it will have 32-bit float. It will have active cooling, so it should run forever. The body will have a tilting electronic viewfinder. That's kind of a common feature on higher end like camcorders, and it allows the filmmaker to have the camera positioned a little bit lower, but still look in the viewfinder. So it gives them more compositional flexibility without having to use the rear screen, which might get washed out in the sun. The rumors are saying it will have a mechanical shutter. Can't imagine why they'd give it a mechanical shutter if they wanted it to shoot video. But maybe they use the entire unit from the A7 IV, and of course it's going to have better AI-AF, so better AF during video. Canon Rumors is saying it's going to cost $3,500, which is a lot for a camera that can't do full width 4K 60, and it should be launched this month on May 28th. Now let's talk about the Nikon Z9 II. I love the Nikon Z9 now, not when it was launched, but after a series of firmware updates, Nikon made it much better. Now it's sort of my go-to camera for wildlife and wildlife video. So I'm super excited to see what the sequel is going to bring. This also comes to us from CanonRumors.com. Some bad news. It's almost exactly the same as the Z9. Now, you shouldn't be super disappointed about that, because for years, Nikon and Canon both with their flagship the flagship cameras always had incremental upgrades followed by big upgrades. Incremental upgrade, big upgrade. Going from the D5 to the D6, for example. And this is going to be an incremental upgrade. And that means a lot of things. Like, it's going to have the same sensor, the same readout speed. But I think they're going to crank up the processing power. So I'm confident we'll be getting more out of that same sensor when it comes to frames per second. It'll still be limited to 8K 60 because that is the physical readout speed of the sensor. It won't be able to do that. But right now you're required to shoot NRAW, which is kind of a pain. I think maybe they'll be able to do H.264, H.265, or maybe ProRes RAW on that. The rumors are saying it'll do 4K 240, and that will definitely be line skipped or heavily cropped. They're saying it will have a flip screen, but I bet it's going to be one of these two-way flip tilty screens. And the rumors are even suggesting it might have 5G wireless. And I would love it if Nikon were the first company to actually listen to me and put in some wireless support. That's something that professionals really need, so you can get like real-time backups and maybe even location tracking. Since the Z9 has a GPS in it, it could be constantly updating its location to some central server in case you get robbed. Of course, that would be optional, and I don't even know if they're going to have it. They're also saying it's going to have red video features, even though at this price, I don't think a lot of people are going to be using it for video first. It'll have a higher quality electronic viewfinder with 5.76 million dots, probably from the Z6 Mark III, and it will have content credentials, which allow you to verify that your RAW file has not been modified. Nobody really uses that right now, but I'm glad to see it rolling out, and maybe someday it'll be useful. I did some math, and I think this could go up to 42 frames per second. The Z9 right now is limited to 30 frames per second JPEG or 20 frames per second RAW, and that puts it behind competitors like the Sony A1, even the original one, or the Canon R5 Mark II. But I think they can use that same sensor and crank up the frames per second if they just add more processing power to it. And I'm confident Nikon will say it has better AF, because everybody just says that with every generation now. It's supposed to be announced at the end of this year and should ship at the beginning of 2026. I'm excited to see it. Nikon also leaked their Z7 Mark III. This comes from CanonRumors.com. The main thing that we know is it should have a 67 megapixel Tower Jazz sensor. That's a pretty big leap from the 45 megapixel sensor in the current one, though Sony went from 42 megapixels to 60 megapixels in their A7R series of cameras, and honestly, in all our side-by-side testing, I couldn't really see much of a difference, even in lab conditions, even with the very best quality glass, because at some point you're limited by optics or diffraction or something other than just the resolution of the sensor. But still, I do like having more megapixels. They're saying that it will have 20 frames per second, better autofocus, a 3.2-inch tilting, probably a tilt flip screen, and 2 SD cards. It'll do 8K at 30 frames per second, and that tells us that it does have a pretty good readout speed, pretty consistent with that 20 frames per second still shooting. And that faster readout speed should allow it to autofocus a lot better. So it has a faster sensor, a real drawback of the current Z7. It'll also do 4K 60, probably not downsampled, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was full width and line skipped, and of course 10-bit video, which is pretty standard, and ProRes RAW video for the serious video makers, even though it's not a video first camera being such high megapixels. Speaking of video first cameras, Canon leaked the R6 Mark III via 4kshooters.net. Like the R6 Mark II, this is going to be a 24 megapixel camera, but it'll shoot 6K at 60 frames per second. So no downsampling there. They're going to allow you to go to a higher resolution. 6K video does look a tiny bit better than 4K video, but mostly you'll shoot that so you can crop and downsample in post and then publish in 4K. It'll support C-Log 2 and 3 for better dynamic range, and we expect to see this in the summer of 2025, coming up real soon. And I'm really excited about this. The Canon R7 Mark II has leaked. Now, for years as a wildlife photographer, I used the 7D, the 7D Mark II, Canon's old DSLRs that were APS-C, but top of the line APS-C. The R7 is the grandson of those cameras, but it never really lived up to its potential. Like 30 frames per second was amazing and is amazing, but the sensor had a really slow readout speed. And it had a higher megapixel sensor than most APS-C cameras, plus that 1.6 times APS-C crop in Canon meant it was really great for pulling detail out of faraway subjects like you use in wildlife. But the sensor readout speed was bad, and the autofocus was only okay, partly because the sensor readout speed was bad. So Canon Rumors is telling us Canon's listened to our feedback and they're going to improve on it. They're going to probably put it in a bigger body, like the body from the R5 Mark II. And that's good, because even though it's an APS-C camera, I want it to be big because I want this to be a professional grade body for people who just need a smaller sensor for things like wildlife. They'll improve the electronic viewfinder and give it 5.76 million dots. It will shoot C-Log 3 in case you also are shooting video with it and you need to maximize the dynamic range. The sensor will be the same resolution, 32 megapixels, but it will be stacked, so a faster readout speed. They're saying it's going to get 40 frames per second. I think Canon might go a little bit faster than that. More importantly, they'll give it a bigger buffer, because right now the shooting time at 30 frames per second is very limited, so you really have to slow it down for shooting wildlife. The bigger buffer will allow you to shoot 40 frames per second longer, and that means when the Osprey is flying towards you, you'll be able to get the very best shot out of it. I'm thinking it might have a CF Express Type B card with an SD card like its big brother, the R5. I hope so, because as we increase the frames per second, the SD cards aren't going to be able to keep up. But having redundant cards in this will be very important. In the comments, let me know what you think, and don't forget to check out our sponsor, Squarespace. Squarespace.com/Tony gets you started with a free trial on a website that you design, that you make your own. But you don't have to be a designer or a website nerd, because they've designed beautiful templates for you. And then you edit it, you improve it, you personalize it, you put in your own colors, your fonts, your own content. You can have AI help you with that if you need the help. Sell products on a store, take appointments from clients, or just tell people about the project that you're working on. Whatever you have in mind, start at squarespace.com/Tony and just try it out. See if it fits your needs, because the trial is completely free, no credit card needed. After you love it, the coupon code Tony will save you 10%. Thanks for sponsoring us, Squarespace. Bye.